Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this edition of The Inside on Equinoxe Television. My name is Babla Jonathan. In this edition of the program, we're going to talk about the arrest and detention of political leaders in the Republic of Cameroon, qualified by many leaders of the opposition, human rights defenders, and of course civil society and non-governmental national and international organizations as arbitrary arrest and detention of political leaders in the Republic of Cameroon. We'll also take a look at the evolution of the Anglophone crisis, the crisis in the northwest and the southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. Stay with us and meet our guest in some few seconds. He has been in detention for close to 2 years. He is one of the special advisors of the national president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party, Professor Maurice Kamto. He is also an evangelist, MUTAGHA Sylvanus Tifu. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mr. Babala Jonathan, and I want to start by thanking God Almighty for His special grace, for His special mercies upon my life since my arrest last 28th of January 2019 up to my release from the Central Prison last 19th of November 2020. It's not been an easy thing. Permit me use this opportunity to start by expressing my dissatisfaction with regards to the way the legal department of our nation, the legal system has been working, because I cannot imagine that somebody will be arrested and dumped in the detention camp before investigations go on. But then it's a motivation for those of us in the opposition party to keep on fighting and to understand that we are not fighting a loose battle, or we are not fighting the wrong fight. It's a fight that is meant for those who want a country that is upright. Thank you so much.
We will know more about that in the course of this program. Let's begin from the 28th of January 2019. Where were you arrested? By who and how?
Mr. Babala Jonathan, it's regrettable that some of us were arrested on the 28th of January 2019. I remember that day I was in school. That was about, because I went somewhere that I give some lessons there. I was invited by the National Secretary of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, that's Mr. Ndong Christopher, to pass through your TV channel, because prior to arrest there had been a political fever. There was a lot of crisis, especially with regards to the destructions of the embassies of Cameroon in Berlin and in France. So in which those guys that destroyed the embassy, a maneuver from the system in place, they wanted to attribute it to a CRM manipulation, which our party declared we had nothing in common with those unidentified men. So that's how I happened to pass through your TV channel in order to clarify it to the international community that the CRM is a peaceful party and we can never buy the ideas of certain individuals that want to violate the institutions of our country. So immediately as I left your TV channel, that was about 7 p.m., I had to pass through Mr. Abel Zonga, that's Honorable Abel Zonga's residence, owing to the fact that information filtered into my ears that the national president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, His Excellency Maurice Kamto, President-elect, was being molested at Mr. Zongan's place. Then as his deputy spokesperson, I needed to pass there to get first-class information, because it sounded to me as rumor. So I had to pass through Mr. Zongan's place. Upon arrival there, I met a good number of militants that were there that day. Most unfortunately for them, that they were outside because the premises of Mr. Zongan could not contain all of them. So some were outside. As I reached there, they were happy to see me. Jubilantly, they ran to me and they said, "Oh, it's good as you're here. We also came curiously to find out what has been happening." So I entered into Mr. Zongan's premises, but I want to assure that I didn't have contact with Professor Kamto because they were in the parlor. and it seemed as if he had a very hectic day. He needed some rest. So I stumbled on journalists like, I wouldn't sound their names, there were some journalists of Canada, somewhere from African media that were there that day. They wanted to get information too, so I had to rally them out at the balcony for a press conference, which I tried to explain to them that most of those who came, they came curiously. It wasn't on any official call that was made for them to be there. So like many sounded, they said there was an insurrectional meeting that was organized. It wasn't a meeting. So they came there. You know, you cannot get that your national president is being molested somewhere, that his life is at a very risky state, and then you just stay as somebody who is very patriotic and convicted. You have to rush there. So that's how they came there. So I did the interview with those TV channels, and at about 8 p.m., that was at about 8 p.m., we were expecting that.
At that time, there were no security and defense forces, no forces of law and order present?
There weren't security officers present. Just we could spot a few of them outside. They were just there like on patrol. There wasn't any intervention. There was no strict order from them forbidding people to have access to Mr. Zongan's place. So as many of the militants gathered there, many of them were willing to trail in. So like I said, as from that was at about 8 p.m. we got an order. It seemed as if it was a police commissioner that came, and that he had a search warrant that was given to him to search Mr. Zongan's place and then bring some, if they were dangerous weapons. So Mr. Zongan came out with, accompanied by Professor Kamto and Christian Penda Ekoka. So when they met the police commissioner, they entertained some discussions with him, and then suddenly we got a conversation that was going on their walkie-talkie. Monsieur le ministre, nous avons trouvé quelques cinquantaine de militants et avec le professeur Maurice Kamto. And then we just got, do you have adequate logistics for them? They said, yes, we have some pickups outside and all the like. And then they said, okay, take them off. So you find out a search warrant was transformed into an arrest warrant. So that's how I asked them where they were taking us to. They told us they will be taking all of us to the judicial police at Bonanjo, where we will be identified, and if we are duly identified, we will be allowed to go back home to meet our families. So we happily followed them to Bonanjo. Upon arrival in Bonanjo, the story was different because
they took everybody to the judicial police.
Yes, to the judicial police in Bonanjo. Upon arrival there, after some questionings, the question Professor Kamto, the questioned Mr. Zongan and the special advisor Penda Ekoka, and I think we had Celestine Jamin, who was with us that day, and other high-ranking officials of the party. So after due process, we only heard that we were to be transported. No, they didn't even tell us that we were to be transported to Yaoundé. We suspected that we were going to be transferred to Yaoundé because we saw 2 buses, 70-seaters, they were parked outside, and they asked if there were enough security men to mount security. So they had to bundle us into 2 buses. At gunpoint, like I tell you, security was heavily mounted. They drove us recklessly to Yaoundé. I want to tell you that
at this point in time, did you have any information about why you were being arrested?
There wasn't any precise information on why we were arrested, because I asked those guys. One of the police officers asked him, where are you taking us to? They told us that it's for a security reason that they are taking us to where they are taking us to. So even with the driving that was done, that's the reckless driving on the highway to Yaoundé. At certain points, most of our guys wanted to ease themselves. They would tell us, no, it's not possible. We tell them, please, why would you be treating us as if we were hardened criminals, rebels and all the like? They told us, no, we have to persevere. Even if we want to ease ourselves, we must understand that it is risky. We must stay calm. because everything they're doing is for our security. That is exactly how it happened. And then I only realized that we were in Yaoundé because we didn't know where they were taking us to. Some of us thought it was already at the end of our lives because there was kind of fidgeting as Romo within us. Some said these guys may be taking us to finish up with us since the CRM is out to get power, and that the regime in place do not want people who are bent on grabbing power from them and all the like. So we were just praying, constantly praying until that was at about 6 a.m. in the morning that I discovered that we were at the GSO in Yaoundé. It was then I realized that we were deported from Douala to Yaoundé and not elsewhere.
And you found yourself at the special police branch in Yaoundé.
In Yaoundé.
While all of these were happening and they were telling you people, stay calm, we are doing all of this for your security, what was your state of mind? How did you feel at that point in time?
Mr. Babala Jonathan, since 2008 that I decided to get involved actively into politics, I think I told my parents that I was already the son of the nation and that they should never really count me as their first-class son, because if they have to do, they might have high blood at any time, because I know exactly how politics in our country is. We know we are living in a country in which we are still struggling to be a democracy. So while we arrived in Yaoundé, with all what they were telling us that for our security and all the like, I realized I had in mind that it was part of the torture. But something was still telling me that it was not for us to be taken away. That we might be taken to Yaoundé, they were going to intimidate us and maybe ask us to sign certain undertakings. You know, that's what they usually do. Maybe sign a certain agreement with them and all like that. No, we are going to allow revendication, because we were revendicating the victory of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement in 2018, which we are still revendicating. We said the government, that's the institution of the country, especially LECAM, you have the Constitutional Council. If they want to silence us, let them do the recounting. And if the recounting proves that we didn't win the elections, we'll be ready to remain quiet. Exactly.
While at the special police branch in Yaoundé, what happened there? Who said what?
At the special police branch in Yaoundé, we spent a week, and that's practically 11 days. We hadn't any contact with any lawyer. We hadn't a contact with any of the government officials to tell us that this is why you are here in Yaoundé. So we were bundled down underground. That's the sous-sol underground. They placed us there.
The underground cells.
Underground cells. But there, I think I personally were down there. There I caught cold, had diarrhea, because you know the water we were drinking there was not good water. And when we tried to find out from the police officers that were on guard. At any time you want to entertain a discussion with them, they were very skeptical. No one wanted to give us the real image of what was happening. They only told us that you are there, you are just like goods that have been packed in a warehouse, and we are just asked to take care of you, to guard you. We don't have any information to give you. You wait until maybe your lawyers will come around and tell you why you are here. And then finally...
For how long were you there?
We stayed there almost about 2 weeks, because I can remember from the 29th over the 12th of February, we were there on the ground. So that was about, that was on the 10th, not 10, yeah, that was on the 10th that the judicial police came there, and they interviewed most of us.
The 10th of...
yes, issued, I cannot really get the picture well, I cannot really recall the date, but I know that was between the 9th and the 10th, something like that.
Of
February
2019
that we had now. Orders from the government commissioner. They sent judicial police there for them to investigation. So they tried to investigate, to question us, what's your profession, what's your link with the CRM and all the like. I want to tell you that curiously and very emphatically, there were guys who were just arrested at Mr. Zongan's place who were never militants of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement. Most of them who came there, they were curious onlookers. They came because they wanted to really see if it were Professor Kamto really that was at Mr. Zongan's place.
And they found themselves with you?
They found themselves
in the cells?
They found themselves with us in the cell.
What were the detention conditions at the level of the Special Police Branch?
Honestly speaking, they were quite deplorable because you cannot imagine that you would...
how were the detention conditions in the Special Police Branch?
Yes, you imagine where you would be spending the same night with women, men and women spending the same nights in the same room, and when you want to take a bath, you would be taken out to be bathed in the open air. Sometimes you find that images of your nakedness will filter into social media, not like some women that it happened to them. We saw their images, videos of their nakedness that were published. We don't know who took those videos. And then you can imagine that there you would be underground where most of us spent nights on bare floor. There were no mattresses for us to use. So you were not allowed to have your family members pay you a visit. So most of the food we ate there, I want to say most of us did not even want to eat the food because we did not know the source of it. It was brought to us by the police officer out of the GSO. Police officer of the GSO. So, but then we did not receive any special torture from them. They were not beating us. But for the fact that we were allowed to sleep on bare floor. You can imagine you sleeping on tiles without any covering and other life for 2 weeks. I think one of our militants, Dr. Kwam Frank Kamgia, he fainted and was rushed to the hospital. We have another guy there that was Chokoto Leopold. He also fainted. He was rushed to the hospital. We have Nina, Pema Nina. She fainted there, you know. They were stressed up because Nina left that day. She was arrested. She left a 3-month-old baby in the house. She didn't know that she was going to just be taken to Yaoundé like that. And with memories of the baby that she left behind, she couldn't have peace of mind. So she fainted in Yaoundé. I want to say it was a very horrible experience for most of us.
Just a little digression. Did she stay in the prison cell with you for close to the 2 years that you were there while the baby was at home? Or she was released later? No, she
stayed there right up to the 4th of October 2019. That was when the presidential decree came out that they should stop proceedings against Professor Maurice Kamto and his militants and allies. So you can imagine from the 28th of January 2019 right up to the 4th of October, that's how it happened. She had to abandon a 3-month-old baby in the house. We don't know how they came that the baby survived, but I want to tell you that it was certainly by the grace of God that the baby survived. Because she was arrested alongside, I think her father too was arrested, and both of them were taken to Yaoundé. It seems as the baby was left in the hands of the babysitter. It was the babysitter who was taking care of the baby.
Okay, so after the interrogations,
yes,
after the questioning,
yes.
What next? What happened next?
After the questioning at the GSO, I want to tell you honestly speaking, on the 12th, like I told you, we're lying on the floor in a cell room. Suddenly, some of my militants, political friends came to me and told me, it seems like these guys will be taking us back to Douala because they have brought a car that they parked outside. I told them, as an evangelist, my spirit keeps on telling me that these guys are not taking us to Douala. They are taking us somewhere else, maybe to the prison. They told me, they said, no, why would you be so pessimistic and thinking that these guys will be taking us to prison after this intimidation for 2 weeks? Don't you think that it's high time they took us back to Douala? I told them, no, I don't still feel it. So on that 12th, we were taken to the military court in Yaoundé for thorough questioning. They questioned us, they asked whether, they questioned us on our relationship with the bars and relationship with the Cameroon Renaissance movement, your position you holding and all the like. So some people got released on bail. I can remember the daughter of Honorable Abel Zonga was released on bail. So you could, if you had 100,000 francs, you could bail with 2 guarantees. sureties, those who could come in and say, no, we guarantee you that anytime you need this person to appear in court, we'll bring the person. So the guards of Mr. Zongan, Honorable Zongan, was also released on bail, and a good number of militants, about 10 of them. And then later the rest were bonded to the prison in Yaoundé Central Prison. That was on Central Prison. Yes, on Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day. That was on the 14th of February, 2019. On Lovers' Day, that's how we were bonded into prison.
And you were transferred to the Yaoundé Central
Prison.
At this point in time, were you already given information about why you were being arrested, why you were being detained? Did you have any information at the level of the military court?
At the level of the military court, we had to sign the charges that were labeled against us. It told us that we were charged for rebellion, we were charged for contempt of the President of the Republic, destruction of public properties. I think revolution, there were almost about 16 charges against us. Lawyers told us that these charges that are against you, you risk that sentence. Some women started lamenting
hostility against
the fatherland. Yeah, you're right. So, in fact, imagine people that were arrested in a private residence. They trebled hostility against the fatherland, destruction of public property. I asked myself if they really caught us red-hot-handed, destroying public property. But then,
that was probably linked to the incidents in Germany and France.
None of us.
The embassies.
Yes, that's certainly, I don't want to concord, but then supposedly they thought we were linked to it. But if a person is in Cameroon and then you have to charge him guilty of something that happened in France, we wonder whether they saw some of us with a flight ticket, or maybe they checked the airport and they saw that we just flew in. Because the real people, we don't even know them, honestly speaking. If you ask the leader of a political party whether we can really identify those people, if they place them in front of us, whether we have any link with them, we don't have any link with those who did such horrible things at the embassies of Cameroon in Berlin and in France. But you know, when you are in a state in which the regime in place wants to conserve power with at all possible means, they would do everything possible to term their rivals or their opponents, the real devils, so as to find a way in destroying them.
Group rebellion and the others, incitement to violence. Did you find yourself in some of those charges? Did you see that there's some action that you might have taken which could amount to that?
It's really regrettable. Personally, as an evangelist, I don't think a rebellion against the state, or maybe group rebellion, inciting rebellion and all the like, is part of me, because we teach respect of the authorities put in place, because all authorities put in place, they are put in place by God using due process. But then it doesn't deny the fact that sometimes God can put an authority in place and then his glory leaves the person. If I want to go biblically, I will take the case of King Saul in the Bible. Remember, King Saul was anointed by the prophet Samuel, but at a certain time, he started doing things that did not please God. So God's grace and God's anointing loved him.
And later he was rejected by God.
He was rejected by God, and then he started pursuing King David, that was anointed by God to take over from him.
Are you saying that's what is happening in Cameroon?
If you have the spiritual eyes to see, then you would judge it yourself.
All right. So at the prison, how were you received there? Where were you sleeping, and what were the conditions there, the treatment at the level of the Yaoundé Central Prison?
Life in the Yaoundé Central Prison is life in prison. And in prison there is no respect of person, to be frank. No matter your social status outside, and most especially as a political leader of the opposition party, when you enter there, you are considered as an outcast, because some of those prison warders, at times they receive specific instructions from their hierarchy, maybe to let hell loose on us. So when we arrived at the Central Prison, I think the very first thing they did for us was to ask us, they stripped us naked. You needed to remain only with your shawl, and then we sat down. That was the process of humiliation. And after that, you need to go through due identification, and then they took us to there's a room they call Passage, Cellule de Passage. It's a room, just let's say
like a transitional
room. A transitional room. That's a room where you have it's just by 2 meters on 3. We bonded there about 120 in that room. The heat there, you would have to be there for 2 weeks. They call it a kind of baptism. It's a kind of baptism. So I imagine people there, like we had Papa Nana and other people, 60 years. There was a father there who was arrested in Bafusam, about 73 years. I saw them sweating. Some of them almost got suffocated. But then, in fact, it was a very horrible experience the first 2 weeks we arrived there. And then later on...
More than 100 people in such a limited space.
In a limited space.
So were people standing, sitting,
in the night,
leaning?
There are times that some will be standing up, and there are times that some will be lying down. So you sleep on shift. They'll tell you have maybe 15 minutes to get rest, so that you wake you up for another person to lie down and rest too. Some will be sleeping while leaning at the wall, and then that's how it happened in that.
And that will go on for 2 weeks.
It went on for 2 weeks, and then after 2 weeks, they had to dispatch people.
Who were the people in that room?
In that room, we had
women and men. Everybody mixed.
No. That's the only place where they did not mix women and men in the same room, because immediately you arrive at the prison, the women have their own quarter, which is the women quarter. So they have to go through the transition room, that the dispatchment.
They have their own transition room.
So they were kept there, and then men were kept in their own room. So treatment is different in the prison. That's men have their separate place where they're kept, the section where they're kept, and women have their own place. So like I told you, we had to be there for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, regrettably, I didn't know that we went through very horrible things again, because it came to the point that we were supposed to be dispatched to transfer to other quarters, different quarters where we now have to enter into your cell. One man there, I think I can recall his name. The guy, they call him the chief of internal discipline. It's abbreviated in French, CBDD. So he was the one that was doing the transfer from one quarter to the other. So now it had to do with your financial status. Means you need to pay some money, which is not what the Ministry of Justice and let me say the Department of the Penitentiary Administration has put in place. It's part of the corruption that was organized specifically maybe to give tough time to the CRM militants then. So you need to pay 100,000, some need to pay 200,000, some need to pay 300,000 francs.
And the amount you pay will determine where you
would have to go. So I was very, very angry with that. So I launched a complaint, and luckily for me, the superintendent of the prison by then, Freddy Mejo, accepted me in his office. I spoke to him. He told me that he does not know that such a thing is happening in his prison. And then he asked me to go and compile the names of all those who paid to that man. So when I went to the quarters, I met my guys and asked them that, okay. And I told them, I've met the superintendent, and the superintendent told me this is what I have to do. Some of them were afraid because they threatened them that if you have to follow this procedure, you'll be given tough times here in prison and all the like. It's just, that's the way it's been done. And all the, so as I was doing that, you find that that man, they call him the CBDD, sent some hardened criminals. Those he's been working with them, because it seems as if it was a network he perfected in the prison to extort money. So he sent them to come and harass me in my cell. Took those papers, they seized those papers, bonded me to the superintendent's office, and told the superintendent that I was recruiting militants in the prison. So I explained to the superintendent that I was not recruiting militant, but that I only was doing the job they asked me to do. So the superintendent was not happy. He asked him to take me back to my cell room. When we left the superintendent's office, he became very, very annoyed and told me I went and betrayed him to the superintendent. He will be sending me to solitary confinement, that I will be in the solitary confinement for 2 weeks, and after that he will determine which quarter I will go to. Maybe I will go to one of the dangerous quarters, that's quarter 8 and 9, where you have maybe those highway robbers and all the likes who have been dumped there. So my guys got indignated, the militants, and then they came to the office and then they made noise then, and then it had to reach the superintendent. So there was noise everywhere that the militants of the CRM wanted to cause a riot in the prison. That was when the Ministry of Justice sent, I'm sure they sent some inspectors came there, because that day when they came and they called me back from my cell room, I went to the superintendent's office. There were about 49 gendarmes that day who came, because the man that the CBDD, maybe with the superintendent, told them that we were bringing up disorder in the prison. So when I met those 2 guys who came from the ministry, I explained the whole thing to them. They told me they've heard me well, so let them take me back to my cell room. And that's how I went to my cell room. The next day by 5 p.m., that chef de cellule de discipline, the CBDD, he was sacked by the Minister of Justice. He was sacked, and then maybe he was demoted, because they told me he was demoted from that post and then sent to another prison. That was the very first battle I had in the prison.
All right, that was something that the authorities managed to...
They managed it. I want to give them applause for that. You know, it's not only just criticizing the regime in place. At times when they do something that is good, we must give them applause.
All right, so for close to 2 years, what were you doing in the prison?
Immediately as
How were you living every day? What were you doing? What are some of the things that you were doing?
Immediately as I integrated the prison, it came to my mind one day that maybe God sent me to prison to meet someone who would talk to me, something different from what I had outside, or he sent me to talk to somebody. So there was the prison ministry that exists, and they call it SOREM. So there are lessons that are constantly being done there. You have pastors coming from outside and other pastors living there, the detainees who are in the prison, that maybe some of them that have gotten a heavy sentence and then decided maybe to give their life to Christ, as it's commonly said. So I integrated I integrated the prison ministry. So I started learning the word of God, and suddenly I decided that I would operate a prayer cell in my quarter that was there. That was quarter 3, which I could give out the word of God, because most often the inmates would not want to go to where they have lessons. So I had to bring the gospel closer to them. So I operated the prayer cell. You find that all this while that I was in prison, at every morning, that's 4 a.m., I would be up from 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. for morning devotion, and every evening I would be with the inmates from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. preaching to them the word of God and transforming lives. That's how, you see, God has used me in the prison all this while. I want to be very frank, because when God does something, you need to thank Him. I cannot tell you.
How did that happen? Is it the pressure and the situation in which you found yourself that transformed you into an evangelist, or it's something that just came like that?
Honestly speaking, I received the calling in 2009. That's when I left from the supermarket, and that's to buy something for my wife. And when I was going back home, I met a prophet on the way. I didn't know him, and right up to today, I cannot tell you where he has gone to. So he was there then with my assistant director in the company that I was working. They stopped me at the roadside and they told me, "Mr. Director, this is a message we have from God for you." That guy was a prophet then. So he told me, God wants you to serve Him. He wants you to go into ministry, and that if you would want to be extremely let me use this word without hiding anything. If you want to be extremely buoyant, financially buoyant, or you want to do exploit in life, everything you want would be in the gospel. So when I returned home that night, I wept bitterly. My wife can attest. I wept bitterly because I had a deep passion for politics, and asked myself, why would God be taking me into evangelism when I have so much passion for politics? So I had to.
And then you ignored the
ignored the calling.
And then you continued with politics.
So after the presidential elections of now let me tell you, after the presidential elections of 2011, that I was with Minister Jean de Diomomo, because then I was his national chief of protocol and spokesperson at the same time in 2011. When I came back from the presidential elections, my pastor then, pastor of the Apostolic Church, told me, you would do politics, but know that you need to serve God. Don't put all your mind into politics. So they programmed me one time in church for this thing for, how do they call it, Bible lessons, that I was to teach Bible studies. I escaped, ran to Bamenda. Most unfortunately for me that day, thieves attacked our vehicle that day, and I almost lost my life that day because I ran away from the church and went to Bamenda.
You behaved like Jonah.
Yes, I behaved like Jonah. That's what happened that day. So when I came back, he laughed and told me that you are running. Finally, you would have to do it. So in prison, let me tell you what happened in prison. In prison, a man of God was sent to prison. Maybe, I don't know what transpired, he was sent to prison. So when he came to prison, I met him to pray for my political career, because I have this in mind that in Africa, most politicians, they run into sects. Some of them run to Africa, black magic and all the like. But I must do politics another way to depend on God. So when I met him, I asked him, I want him to pray for my political career to flourish. As he was praying, he told me that no, the man I'm seeing is a big evangelist. He asked me, do you know Renard Bonke? I said, I don't know Renard Bonke. He told me that as I was praying to you, that's the vision I had. I saw a large crowd that was pulling. And then finally he told me, if there is a man of God in this nation that will be owning a private jet, I'm seeing you being part of those who will be owning a private jet. So that's how it happened. In that, and then one time during my
and then from there you started
I just continued. It's not, I did not follow from then, because that was what I was doing. So there were some pastors. There was a pastor that came, the Pastor Njana and all the like. He owns churches outside. So he told me, before he left the prison, he told me the Spirit of God asked him to consecrate me into full ministry, to start preaching the word of God. So that's how I was consecrated and into the field of evangelism. And I started doing the job of evangelist in prison. So in the prison, it was a very Herculean task, because many people ask me, how can an evangelist like you be at the same time a politician? To them, they think that politics and religion are diametrically opposed. But then if you...
What did you tell them about that? Because there is this question of men of God becoming politicians. That's not really sounding well in the ears of men.
If you want to go memory lane, let me say you go to biblical facts, you find that in the Old Testament, all the rulers in the Old Testament were chosen by God, and they were all into politics. So the rulers of old were chosen by God. So the politicians of old were chosen by God. They were not politicians that were made by men.
But the problem today is that politics is seen as a dirty game, as a game of lies, as a game of tricks, as a game of fake promises, as a game of all what you can sign.
Yes, that is the way the Western world has decided to paint politics in Africa, because in the Western world they tell you that politics is changing stumbling blocks into stepping stones. And then in Africa they give us a different perception of politics, that it is about clearing of obstacles. So what they mean by clearing obstacles means you need to do backstabbing, you need to kill, you need to do this and all the like. So I think that it's high time we told our African citizens that politics is not a dirty game. it's just a way of changing people's lives, just like the pastor preaches in church to transform lives. Where do you think that those lives you are transforming would be? They would be in the field of politics. They would be in the fields of economic. And politics is something that is nearly in all homes. To manage your home, you need politics. There's the politics of the home.
Is it not because is that connotation of that negative connotation given to politics not the fruit of some actions by many of the politicians in African countries today? Not only African countries, but elsewhere around the world.
One thing that really motivates me to think that I'm into the right field is because after I've had a lot of conversation with the national president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, Professor Maurice Kamto, I made it emphatically to him that I made it clear to him that I'm an evangelist, and I think there are certain things I might not concord with. My work with him would always be telling him the mind of God, and telling him that like this, we need to do politics in a different way.
As one of the 7 special advisors of the president, we are going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week. The press review by Immaculate Fogbe. We'll be right back.
The Median, bowing to pressure, Douala Court frees detained barrister Tamfu Richard and Amel Chuminye. The Post and the Advocate say lawyers begin nationwide strike on November 30th. Another edition of the Median says, utterly tired of Amber Trusters, Bamenda hails Army's cleaning operation. The Horizon, Anglophone crisis, United Kingdom disavows separatists. The Post, Bia's envoy visit to Anglophone refugees in Nigeria sparks controversy. The Horizon, Cameroon accused of diverting foreign aid to war in the Northwest and Southwest regions. The Star, Defense Minister emphasizes determination to assist Northwest local authorities. The Sun, Minister Paula Tanganji tasked governors to be on alert as December 6th election and end-of-year festivities approach. The Watchdog Tribune, regional elections of December 6th, 2020, the gateway to spatial status. All eyes on municipal councillors as the population brace to celebrate. The Guardian Post, Regional Assembly, Northwest CPDM bigwigs stuck in deadly over bureau positions. The Herald Tribune, Bamenda City Mayor tells colleagues, don't bring that your SDF mentality here. The Chronicle Times, Cameroonians condemn Macron's undemocratic declarations.
Thanks, Immaculate Fogbe, for the press review. MUTAGHA Sylvanus Tifu, one of the special advisors of Professor Maurice Kamto of the CRM political party. You were released recently. How did it happen, your release? How did it come around?
My humble journalist, I want to appreciate you for your professionalism and to thank God for really putting up in your mind to ask this very pertinent question. You know, after the release of the over 145 militants of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement and sympathizers and allies, last October 4th, 2019, some of us, unfortunately, about 15 of us were left behind. I'm thinking of
including the Vice President,
the first national Vice President of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, Mamadou Yakuba Mota. We were held behind because of the mutiny that occurred on the 22nd of July 2019 in the Condé Center prison. Honestly speaking, that day I was in my cell room. That was on that fateful day. I was in my cell room because in the prison, like I told you, most often I read all through the night. I mean, read from 10 p.m. right up to 3 a.m. in the morning, and I go to church 4 a.m. That means in the afternoon I will be sleeping. That's how I reversed.
So on the day that incident occurred, you were in your cell sleeping?
In my cell room, I was sleeping. So I got up at about 3 p.m. and there was noise outside, music, because it was not like riot, it was music. The Anglophone detainees were playing drums. They had drums in the prison. They were playing those drums.
The detainees of the Anglophone crisis.
Yes, they were playing drums and dancing outside. So when I went outside, I went outside by 4 o'clock. I went outside, crossed, went to the chaplaincy of the prison. So as I was coming back from the chaplaincy, I met one of the guys who works. He works at the rapid intervention cell of the prison. It's a warder. He called me and told me, "Evangelist, come." I went there. He told me, "Please," that was about 4 something. He told me, "Please try to talk to your guys," because it seemed as if prior to that, the governor and other top government officials had come to the prison, maybe to hear them out, and they said no, they wanted the Minister of Justice himself to come down. So it was getting to 4 something, because in the prison by 5 o'clock, everyone is supposed to be in their quarter, because you have the inner yard of the prison that people usually go there. Maybe you have acquaintance with people from other quarters, you dialogue with them, and then do a little bit of sport exercises. So as I went to meet that guy, he talked to me and that I should persuade those my guys to go back to their cell room. So I went to them, I spoke to them, and some yielded and some didn't yield to my advice. So I went back, gave the report to him, and then went to my quarter. So in the night, that was when the whole thing escalated, and there was the burning of the prison. I just only saw fire coming out. That's ravaging, I think, the library and other things. So, and then there was intervention from the gendarmerie, I think, and there was some police officers were sent there. So they threw tear gas into the prison. So we ran into our cell rooms. So with that tear gas, you could not breathe. I had to use a cloth, soak it in water, and then blocked my nostrils just to prevent intoxication. So there was some calm. So I went in my manda, because the prison bed, they call it manda. I was sleeping, and then since I was in the room of the coordinator of quarter 3, who's a detainee, he rushed to my room. It was about 10 p.m. and told me, "One of your detainees, Nana Sesh Branco, has just been taken out by the forces of law and order, and that the rumor is that he's even seriously wounded. We don't know if he will survive." I woke up and said, "What kind of news is this?" As I went out, I met some of our militants. They were there. Some were already weeping. Some of them were agitating. So there was a 6-star that they called a general who came. So I tried to calm those guys. He told us that no, the guy is sound. He's at the superintendent's office. Our guy said no. So
what happened to him?
He was taken out. Nothing. He was not wounded. It's just that they came and took him out as one of the instigators of what happened in the prison. So the 6-star told me, "Followed us to the superintendent office, and you will see him there, so that you get the information to come and tell your guys that he's sound and safe." So when I went there at the yard, that's they call it the cour d'honneur of the prison, he asked me to sit on a chair that was outside. I sat on that chair. Suddenly, I only saw gendarmes. They came and they told me, they said, "Ça c'est l'ancien vice-président de Momola, c'est lui." And then there was kind of commotion. They ran on me, stripped me naked. I just saw sticks falling on their buttons. They were beating me mercilessly. I told them, "I don't understand what the game went on." So one of those prison warders came and told them this guy was not involved. They told them that, "No, you are talking because he's your friend. If you could master this thing, we would not have been here." That's how they bundled me out. Now I was handcuffed to one hardened criminal, and then we were taken to the GSO, where we spent over 2 weeks in the same room with Mancho BBC, Ngalin Felix. I think about 27 of us there, handcuffed. You were to sleep with chains 24 hours for 2 weeks. If you want to go and bathe, you will go and bathe with your fellow detainee, handcuffed, sleeping on bare floor. That's how it happened before And then within those 2 weeks that we spent at the GSO, we hadn't access to our lawyers. It was only on the day that we were going to the court that, no, a day before we went to court, that we were called and questioned. So now,
did you seek to have access to your lawyers?
We seek to have access to our lawyers to no avail. To no avail. To no avail. So at the court of first instance, that was the court of first instance of Equinoxe, the Equinoxe court of first instance. So they had to investigate our involvement in the mutiny, and I explained to them exactly what I am just telling you. So now, during the day we were about to be judged, we were at the Fundi High, that's Court of Appeal, because then we were appealing the competence of the military court in trying civilians.
At the same time, you were to be.
I was supposed to appear
at the Equinoxe Court of first instance.
So that, as we did not appear, we only had to reach. They were called up the next week. We appeared and they told us that they were doing the final readings, and that the judge said we refused to that we appeared and then we refused to be judged. That is how it happened. It means
they gave a sentence.
I was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment.
Added to the previous sentence of the military court?
No, the military court did not sentence us because the president had signed a decree that they should stop the proceedings. So that's how I was involved in the mutiny of 22nd of July 2019. So they gave me 3 years sentence, and the lawyers of the party had to introduce an appeal. So it took over 3 months for the appeal to be accepted, and then multiple adjournments, almost over 15 adjournments, until the 29th of October 2020, that the final judgment was passed on, and then they had to declare me non guilty of all the charges. Because when I was there, I told the judge.
That was after several months?
Several months, 1 year, 5 months. 1 year, 5 months. It took them 1 year, 5 months to prove my innocence. So I had to spend extra 1 year, 5 months in prison after the release of the other people on the 4th of October 2019.
In the meantime, the others are still in detention, Mamadou MUTAGHA?
Presently, we have about 12 militants who are still in detention, among the first group that arrived on the 14th of February 2019. And then those who arrived on the 1st of June 2019, they are still there. A man like Mamadou MUTAGHA was, his prison sentence was reduced from 2 years to 1 year, 6 months. And then you have another guy, a militant, whose prison term was reduced to 1 year, 6 months. So 2 of them are still left in the prison that will be released. That's on the 5th of February 2020. The rest will be living on the 5th of December. That if they have to pay the fines and the expenses. If not, they would have to spend extra 20 days and be released only on the 25th of December.
Okay, we're going to listen to some interviews and we'll be right back in some few minutes.
Look at my sister, you know the places that we get to occur. And this time around, they occur right in the classroom. Oh God, this morning we have come here for an arm-free crusade. An arm-free crusade for peace.
They have been given 6 months suspended sentence for 3 years. It means they can go home, and that if they commit this kind of offense again, then they would have to serve the 6 month sentence before they are prosecuted. More like a clash of the titans. There was the force of the bench and the force of the bar. And so I think the judge saw that there was too much tension in the air and thought that it's what we call in English, in pidgin parlance, a draw game.
Working in Bangem is so challenging. First of all, we don't have personnel. There is no state nurse in this hospital. We find ourselves at times with 2 nurses working, covering all the units. Now we also have a problem of specialized personnel. We equally have a problem in the laboratory. If we could have a full blood count machine, it will go a long way to help us in the quality of treatment that we give to our patients. Even in the theater, we've just adapted something for people to leave from Bangam to Kongsamba to go and consult. So if we could have those services here, it will be a boost to the hospital.
We do not have enough equipment. Good personnel, or maybe even the nurses, because we have just few of them here. Every day they are always on duty to assist the other ones, the other few ones that we have. We'll still beg on government to help us to send more equipment to facilitate some activities here, and specialists, so that we'll stop going out of Bangam, because there are tests that if you want to do, you will not be able to do it here in Bangam. You have to go out of Bangam to do the tests.
To be honest with you, the hospital has difficulties in terms of equipment, and that is why we also wanted to give a touch by trying to buy some needy. The state have been doing something they want to believe it had not been enough. It used to be in a deplorable situation, be it from the structure, the physical look, and even the staffing. Health is wealth. Without your health functioning well, you can never do anything.
I have no doubts in my mind that the expectations of the people are going to be met with an outstanding result, a result that is going to reflect the fidelity, the loyalty, and of course the commitment and dedication of the people of Fako Division to the cause of peace and the realization of a speedy decentralization process in this country.
Do we want a victory that will be riddled with no votes, which may be misinterpreted by our detractors to insinuate that we are protesting against ourselves and our own party, or that we don't know what we want?
The Popular Action Party condemns in strongest terms the systematic repression of the BR regime on opposition leaders, notably some CRM leaders. We have taken a keen observation that for some number of months, weeks now, let me say since the 20th of September, there have been a systematic crackdown on CRM members, and the national president, Professor Maurice Kamto, who is being blocked from and be deprived from democratically expressing himself, and we don't know why at this stage, we at the moment where we felt that Cameroon is a democratic country, where we feel that the opposition are there to also chip in their own opinion, but we have been seeing rather a repressive attitude from the BR regime.
The national president of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party, has been under what is qualified as forceful detention by some lawyers and house arrest by others, and other political leaders, including the spokesperson, the spokesperson of Professor Maurice Kamto Bibu Nisak, and of course the Professor Alain Fougué also. And recently, the latest was the women's president, Awasu Misbah, who was also arrested, and they are in custody. What's happening to all of these leaders of the CRM political party? What do you think about this arrest and detention of leaders?
It's part of the arbitrary arrest and detention of political figures in our country. It's not only happening to them because they are politicians. I think it's the same thing that most Cameroonians are facing on almost a daily basis. Their own is glaring because they belong to a political party. Because when we arrived at the Kondengui Central Prison, I met a man there called Jules Omechwenkam. He had been in detention for over 10 years without judgment, and one day they just came and told him, we found out you were not guilty. They had to free, discharge and acquit him. Imagine
After 10 years.
After 10 years. So it's the same thing. You can imagine that a man of Professor Maurice Kamto's caliber, the President-elect of the Republic of Cameroon, is under house detention since the 19th of February. That's the 19th of February, if not mistaken, 19th of February. just simply because he stood up and said, no, we cannot continue fooling the people, deceiving them that Cameroon is a democracy, of which it's not. We asked for a ceasefire with regards to the war ongoing in the northwest and southwest region, and then we talk of a consensual reform of the electoral code. Those are the two striking items that featured on the
resistance plan.
The resistance plan that was protest. To be, yes, that the protest march of that 22nd. Mr. Jonathan, when you look at countries like Ivory Coast has been in a deadlock for a very long time, but I want to thank a man like Alassane Dramane Ouattara for his sincerity, even though we blame him for having manipulated the constitution and taken on the third mandate. But we, of the Cameroon Renaissance movement, we thought that if Cameroon were a state of democracy, there would have been a political dialogue between Professor Maurice Kamto. But looking at the way...
And President Paul Biya?
Yes, President Paul Biya, that is exactly what we thought would be done. If at all they don't want to go into recounting, because it has never been power at all costs. We want the recounting to be done to prove to the members of the Cameroon Renaissance movement, to prove to the electorate, the Cameroon people who elected Professor Maurice Kamto that last 7th of October 2018, that he did not win, because from the statistics that the Cameroon Renaissance movement have, we are still very convinced that we won the elections. So,
do you still plan to continue with this resistance plan to continue demanding for what you qualify as the stolen victory of Professor Maurice Kamto, even if you are arrested and brought back to jail?
Mr. Jonathan, the Bible says in the book of Galatians chapter 6 that we must never relent in doing what is good, especially in the eyes of the Lord. Resistance is not something that is new. It is a biblical notion. It exists in the book of Hebrews. If you want to read it, that's Hebrews chapter, I'm sure chapter 12, you read from verses 4 to 11. So like I told you, it is said in the Bible you should never relent in doing the right thing, because if you don't relent, you will reap at the appointed season. So if resisting the regime in place would help to ensure real participatory democracy to be implanted in our nation, would help to seeing that the war in the northwest and southwest region comes to an end, will help to see that we have institutions that work for the good of the Cameroon people and not for a group of egocentric individuals, I think is worth the price.
All right. And talking about the Anglophone crisis, in some few words, there are many people today, political leaders and even rights defenders, human rights defenders, civil society organizations, who think that it is time to stop the blame game. It is time to stop blaming each other and give peace a chance in Cameroon and open a way for a peaceful resolution of the crisis. In some few words, what do you think about this?
It's what we've been advocating for. I remember even during my days back in Padec of Minister Jean de Dieu Momo, I'd never changed my line of politics. When the Anglophone crisis popped
up, you believe it can be resolved in a peaceful manner?
Yes, I believe. I believe the Anglophone crisis can be resolved through meaningful and inclusive dialogue. So like I said, since 2016 that the war sparked out, I have been advocating for a dialogue. We even said in 2016 that if President Paul Biya could go to the northwest and southwest region and try to dialogue with the traditional rulers and maybe some political actors of those two regions, it would have long quelled the crisis. But then, with arrogance from his advisors and other people who fed him up with wrong information, he didn't do it. So today, we cannot be bent on winning the war. There's never a winner in a war. Because if I want to look at what the government is trying to do, they want to win the war. They want to win the war. Because if they were out maybe to give a lasting solution to the plight of the Anglophone people, dialogue is the only thing that can be done.
The President of the Republic and other government authorities organized the major national dialogue, but from what you're saying now, it can be concluded that you are agreeing with those who are saying that there is need for another dialogue, inclusive, bringing everybody on board, including those who are asking for cessation, to chat away in a peaceful manner out of the crisis. And you also talked about a ceasefire that should be established in those two regions to restore peace. MUTAGHA SYLVANUS Tifu, one of the 7 special advisors of the National President of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM political party, and evangelist, part of the prison ministry. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mr. Babala Jonathan. Permit me use this opportunity to wish a special stay. What I mean special stay for my political friends who are in prison, Mr. Bibum Nisak, that's the spokesperson of the president-elect. You have Professor Alain Foguet, that's the treasurer of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement. You have Mr. Mamadou Mota, who is the first national vice president, and Mr. Zambwe Pascal, who is the inspector in charge of implementation. If you can get all these names being cited, you find that practically all the officials of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement are in prison, and it's part of the regime strategy, maybe to intimidate the party to play the hanking-panking game.
Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. I want to greet the pastors, the evangelists, and I would like to beg of them to continue praying for the nation Cameroon, because the best days of our nations are not yet past. They are still right ahead of us.
Continue praying for Cameroon. The best days are right ahead. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.